11th Day. That's how, estimated Dr. Siegnagel, the Kingdom of Tartessos disappeared forever. The General Barca represented again the myth of the Argive Perseus cutting the head of Medusa, and also one of the Heracles Merkath, defeating the triple population of the Geryons. Nevertheless, even though from Tartessos naught remained stone over stone, the sacred forest was reduced to ashes, and the sculpture of Pyrene was demolished by order of Heracles Barca. The golem's prophecy was not fulfilled because the stone of Venus, the unique eye of the Vryas, couldn't be stolen by Bera and Bersha. That demonstrates that even though it is true that the mystical arguments can be developed many times over the earth, their repetition is not always identical, and even they can produce more than one surprise for who has propitiated them. In this opportunity not only failed the prophecy when the wise sword remained saved, but the extermination sentence that was over the house of Tartessos neither could be accomplished. In the Argive myth, when Perseus nailed the sickle on Medusa's neck, from the wound born two extraordinary beings, Chrysaor and Pegasus. According to the myth, only Poseidon, the king of the Atlantis and god of the Occidental Sea, dared to love Medusa, with whom beget two sons, Chrysaor and Pegasus, who had born from the wound infringed by Perseus. Chrysaor would be a giant destined to marry Caliber, a daughter of Oceanus, from whose union would born the triple giant Geryon. I believe, Dr. Siegnagel, that the last manifestation of the myth, concretized in the tragedy of Tartessos, would determine its repetition until its minor details, although not complying happily with the prophecy of the golems. I believe, for example, that effectively from the dissected neck of Medusa, from the ruin of Tartessos, born Chrysaor, the giant son of Poseidon. He was, undoubtedly, Leto de Tarsus, who, as will be seen later, wedded with a daughter of the sea, a princess of America. The other of the Occidental Sea, Chrysaor, would born armed with a golden sword, just as Leto de Tarsus, who would depart to America carrying the wise sword of the Iberian kings. And I also believe that Pegasus is my son Noio, who is born with wings to fly up to the abodes of the liberator gods, and he has the power to open the founts with his strikes. Just that in his case, it treats about the founts of the wisdom. The survivors of the house of Tartessos, curiously 18, were gathered near to the secret cave, in a narrow terrace naturally protected with huge rocks, which allowed certain defense and whence could be dominated the hillside of the mountain range. The saga tells me that one moment before, the men of stone, the only ones who knew how to enter, had sustained a council in the secret cave. Before the disaster that was coming against the house of Tartessos, they swore to dedicate all the efforts to give fulfillment to the familiar mission and save the wise sword. Was necessary for the lineage to continue existing at any cost, and concerning to the wise sword, they decided that after the death of the last Vryas would remain perpetually deposited in the secret cave, at least until the day when other man of stone, offspring of the house of Tartessos, would be able to see in it the lytic sign of Katagar, and to know that they should go until the occasion the wise sword would not see the light of day. When they left, they communicated these determinations to their relatives and required news about the realm, but the news that reached to the improvised refuge was strange and contradictory. It should be discarded a prompt help of the Romans due to the golems had rebelled against them all, the populations of the Gaul, cutting off the path to Spain. The rescue of Tartessos demanded now a very numerous expedition, which would leave unprotected the own Rome. On the other hand, in Tartessos, the Carthaginian victory had been overwhelming. All Tartessos was in power of the General Barca, what completed the total occupation of the south of Spain. To the lords of Tarsus only remained their lives and a battalion of loyal and brave royal guards. However, something strange and contradictory happened. Heracles Barca, it is true, annihilated Tartessos down to convert it in debris. In this action, both he and the mercenary army acted moved by a homicidal fury which surpassed every reasoning, by an indomitable force that possessed them and did not abandon them until they destroyed completely the already occupied city. Was as if the hate experimented for centuries by the golems against the house of Tartessos would have been accumulated in some obscure recipient, perhaps in the myth of Perseus, to release it altogether in the Carthaginian soul. Nevertheless, after consummated the irrational destruction, the General Barca and the military chiefs who accompanied, he recovered abruptly their lucidity. Not being apart from this phenomenon, the death of the 20 golems and the departure of the Bera and Bersha. Momentarily something was interrupted, something that impulsed General Barca to desire the annihilation of the House of Tartessos, and there were no golems in Tartessos any more to restart it. Thereby, free for the moment of destructive passion of the Argive Perseus, Hamilcar Barca worked with the reasonableness of an authentic Carthaginian, i.e., he thought in his personal interests. For Hamilcar Barca, the enemy was not only in Rome, there in any case was the enemy of Carthage, but in Carthage were also the enemies of Hamilcar Barca, who envied his career as successful general and distrusted of his power. Those who had sent him 8 years before to conquer such an inhospitable country and had no intentions to make him return. But Hamilcar Barca would pay them with the same coin. He would demonstrate to the government of Carthage the same indifference and would usufruct in his family and own advantage the immense conquered territory. Spain would be the particular Barca's estate. But for it would be necessary to count with the indispensable collaboration of the native population, who had ruled until that moment the country, and knew all the mechanisms of its operation. And such bellicose countries, who were free for centuries, would not easily submit to the slavery. This was clearly adverted by the Barcas, at least that their own kings and lords would convince them that it was better to not resist the occupation. The solution would not be impossible, due to, according to the particular philosophy of the Carthaginians, would only need to be destroyed the one who could not be bought. The strange and contradictory news reached then to the refuge of the lords of Tarsus. Hamilcar Barca would offer them to save their lives if they renounced to every right over Tartessos and accepted to enter at his service to govern the country. On the contrary case, would be exterminated as the golems claimed. With so much pain, but without possible alternatives, the lords of Tarsus had to accept such dishonorable offer. They made it for a superior interest, for the familiar mission and the wise sword. Once arranged the surrender, Tarsus passed to serve the Barcas, and they were occupied in to pacify Tartessos and reorganize the agricultural and industrial production. Due to the demonstrated good disposition, they were rewarded with a farm located very near from the emplacement of the disappeared Tartessos, where would live since then the Tarsus family, except for the members that performed functions in the cities or accompanied the Barcas in the inspection journeys. While the Carthaginian occupation lasted, nonetheless, the protection assured by the Barcas, the tranquility was scarce due to the golems who were constantly spying, who explored inch by inch seeking for the wise sword, and had added now the death of 20 of them to the list of pending charges to pay off by the House of Tarsus. At the death of Hamilcar Barca in 228 BC, he succeeded in his son, Hasdrubal Barca. But after his assassination in 2020 BC, Hannibal Barca assumes the command of the Carthaginian army. The nephew of Hamilcar invaded the Greek colony of Sagunt in the year 219 BC, which was under the protection of Rome, and started with this action the Second Punic War, that would end in 201 BC with the unconditional capitulation of Carthage. 30 years after the destruction of Tartessos, Spain was free forever from the Carthaginian invader. But it was too late for Tartessos. The new Roman occupant would not abandon the peninsula until the dismemberment of his own empire 700 years later. With the Romans, the House of Tarsus had a relatively good time because it was considered an allied nobility, and their governed functions of the region were restored. Now a Roman province, subjected to the law of the Republic and to the authority of the proconsul or praetor. The region of the ancient Tartessos between the rivers Tinto and Odiel remained included in the province of Baetica, dominated with this name for the river Betis, today Guadalquivir, which was extended up to the river Anas, today Guadiana, frontier of Lusitania. Romans gave to the Tartessians the name Turdetani. In a few decades, the Turdetani was Romanized, the use of Latin was popularized, and great rural states were constructed, properties of the governors of each province, magistrates, or army chiefs. In the 1st century BC, the House of Tarsus had been related with the Roman nobility and was quite powerful in the Baetica province. a province that counted with 175 cities, many of them rich and forceful as Cordova, Cadiz, Seville, Malaga, over the base of the estate given by the Carthaginian and the restitutions made by the Romans. The lords of Tarsus developed a rustic Roman village, building a lordly residence, and widening it with the acquisition of huge extensions of fields for cultivation, cereals, olive, grapevine, integrated the main production apart from some minerals that were still exploited in the mountain range of Katochar. It must be clarified that the Roman Cadetra named it as the village of Tartessos, while the Roman Empire governed, although I will continue mentioning lords of Tarsus to maintain the continuity of the narration. As all the landowners' families, Roman Hispanic, possessed a dwelling in the city where they remained most part of the year. However, if they could, they always preferred to retire to the campestrial land, because their major interest was to be near to the secret cave. The Gauls had no chance to influence over the Roman population, and their power was conserved intact only in Lusitania, in some regions of the Gaul, in Britain and Hibernia. After the campaigns of Julius Caesar, this power seemed to decrease completely, and for some time was believed that the threat was definitely conjured. This, as was seen, was an error of appreciation, a new underestimation with respect to the capacity of the Gauls to carry out their plans. In regard to the cult of the cold fire, the lords of Tarsus had no problems to reimplant it because Romans were notably tolerable in religious matters. And they also worshipped their fire since remote ages. In the villages of Tarsus they constructed a lorarium, dedicated to Vesta, the Roman goddess of fire and home. There, before the statue of the goddess Vesta Pyrene, burned the perennial lamp of the home, the flamma lar, that should never be off. Even being now a private cult, the House of Tarsus had not lost their mystical and thaumaturge fame, and soon their village became another place of pilgrimage for the seekers of the spirit. Without reaching, naturally, the proportions of the age of Tartessos, the family gave to Rome good functionaries and soldiers, apart from the contribution of food and mineral production, but also provided Rome haruspes, augurs, and vestals. 12th day. The Emperor Constantine, with the Edict of Milan of 313, legalizes Christianity and grants rights equivalent to the official pagan cults. At the end of the 4th century, in the year 381, and thanks to the Emperor Theodosius I, declares Christianity the official religion of the estate, and pagan cults were forbidden. In 386, it's ordained through an imperial decree the closure of all pagan temples, and in 392, by imperial law, the pagan cult is considered and punished as crime of lese majesty. That's to say, sanctioned with death sentence. These actions not affected to the lords of Tarsus because years before they had already adopted Christianity as familiar religion. The cult of Jesus Christ proceeded from Canaan, the homelands of the Gauls, and such origin resulted, as is logic, suspicious since the beginning, but also was the pretended cultural fundament of the tragedy of Jesus, the registered prophecies in the set of the canonical books of the Hebrews, who claimed to be the chosen people of the Creator God. Nothing of this convinced to the lords of Tarsus, and on the contrary, as more they watched the new Oriental cult, more they persuaded themselves that behind it was hidden a colossal, contrived conspiracy of the white fraternity. How was then that they adopted Christianity as a familiar religion? Because about the provenance of the cult and the filiation of their worshippers, an unquestionable fact existed, that the story narrated by the Gospels was real in part. This could be assured by the Lord of Tarsus without any genre of doubts, because they knew it since thousands of years ago, much before that Jesus came to Palestine, because that was undoubtedly a new version of Nabutan's history. To know history in all its purity would be necessary to go back thousands of years to the past, to the age of the White Atlanteans, father of all the white populations of the Pact of Blood. They assured to be guided by Nabutan, the great white chief who had discovered the secret of the spiritual incarceration and had revealed them the manner in which the spirit could abandon the matter and be free of eternal beyond the stars, i.e., beyond the abodes of the gods and the potencies of the matter. According to the narrations of the White Atlanteans, Nabutan was a god who existed, free and eternal as all the Hyperborean spirits, beyond the stars, the unknowable God from whom nothing can be affirmed, from here far from the origin. Navutan and other gods were angry because a part of the race of the spirit was trapped in the universe of the matter. The anger was not just directed to the potencies of matter who retained the spirits, but also against the weak spirits, against those who lacked gracefulness will, to break the illusion of the great deceit and be free by himself. In the earth, the spirit had been incarcerated to the animal man, to use its volitional force to accelerate the evolution of his psychic sphere. And such ferrous was the incarceration, such submerged was the spirit in the anemic nature of the animal man, that had forgotten the origin and he believed to be a product of the nature and the potencies of the matter, a creation of the gods. In other cases, since the spirit remained in the earth, the liberator gods, their brother spirits, came to their rescue, and many were liberated, and they returned with them. For this cause, terrible battles were fought against the potencies of the matter. Finally, for example, had crossed the origin, and had presented before the Atlantean men the great chief of all the prisoner Hyperborean race, the lord of the beauty of the uncreated forms, the lord of absolute courage, the lord of the uncreated light, the envoy of the unknowable God to liberate the spirit, that's to say, the Christos of the uncreated light, Christos light, Lucy Bel, Lucifer, or Christos Lucifer. But the manifestation of Christos Lucifer and the Atlantis caused the destruction of the materialist civilization. The battle of the Atlantis ended with the submergence of the continent, much later of his return to the origin. In these circumstances, in front of the imminent catastrophe of the Atlantis was developed the history of Navutan. The yellow men, the red men, the black men all would perish in a cataclysm worse than which is looming in the Atlantis. The one that worries the liberator gods is the spiritual cataclysm, the abyss in which will be submerged even those who survive to the submergence of the Atlantis. And that result seems to be unavoidable due to the insistence and tenacity which the white fraternity maintain the spiritual incarceration, but mainly due to the impossibility demonstrated by the spirit to avoid the illusion and to wake up from the great deceit. Such races, strategically confused, will continue following, blindly, the Atlantean priests, who will guide them directly to their spiritual decadence. The white race is the only, in this moment, that disposes of an opportunity of liberation, possibility that the gods will not ignore. But the white men are too asleep, with the spirit highly submerged in the illusion of the matter, extremely projected in the exterior world, will not be able to comprehend the interior revelation of the spirit, will not be able to be free by themselves. It is necessary an exterior revelation of the spirit suitable for the white race to show the white man from outside a liberation path capable to guide him to the Hyperborean wisdom. For it, Navutan descends to hell. Navutan, God free and eternal, accepts to descend to hell, come to the world of matter, and to born as a white man, and as a white man realizes the feat to set free his chained spirit by himself. He will demonstrate in this way to men, with the example of his will, the path to follow, the orientation towards the origin. In sum, the history that the white Atlanteans transmitted in form of myth to the native populations is the next. In the Atlantis lived a very holy white virgin, consecrated to the unknowable God service and completely committed to the contemplation of the uncreated light. Afflicted by the terrible famine that her people suffered, such virgin asked for help to the unknowable, and this supreme God, whose will is the grace, teaches her a path towards the planet Venus. Once there, the virgin received from the envoy of the unknowable many exemplar of the plant of the wheat, which she could use to satiate the material hunger of man, a birch rod that would be useful to measure the white treason, and the seed of a child of stone, who would one day be man. He would place at the head of the white race, and would satiate their spiritual hunger. When returning from Venus, the white virgin, who never had a carnal contact with any man, was pregnant of Navutan. The liberator gods had already announced that she would be mother and would give birth to a child whose spiritual wisdom would liberate the white race from the material slavery. A serpent tried to avoid the virgin, to comply with her commitment, but she kills it, crushing its head with her right foot. Past the pregnancy period, the virgin gives birth to Navutan and educates him as a constructor warrior, counting with the help of the guardians of the Lytic wisdom. In the Atlantis existed a footpath that guided to a spellbound garden, which was constructed by the god of the illusion. There an ancient pomegranate tree grew. knew as the tree of life and also as the tree of terror, which roots were extended through all the earth and which branches were elevated up to the celestial abodes of the god of the illusion. Near to that bewitched pomegranate existed an apple tree, as ancient as such, which was called the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, or tree of the death. Was a common belief amongst the Atlanteans that men, in a beginning, were immortal. The cause that men had to die was because of the great ancestors had eaten from the fruit of that tree, and the death was transmitted to their offspring as a disease. In reality, the blood of the tree, its damned salvia, was mixed with the immortal blood of the original man, and it regulated, from the interior of man, the life and death, and no one knew the remedy for that disease. Navutan, who didn't have a human father, was born immortal, as the original man. But his immortality was, for the same reason, essential, own of his special spiritual nature. In consequence, his immortality was incommunicable to the rest of the white men. It was not useful for them to recover their lost immortality. For this reason, Navutan, with the support of his divine mother, the Virgin Amma, decided to become mortal and discover the secret of immortality for mankind. Since the great ancestors ate the fruit of the tree of death, no one dared to get closer to him due to the fear of the death. But Navutan was immortal as the great ancestors, and he achieved, as them, to get closer without problems. Once next to the tree, Navutan cut and ate from the forbidden fruit, remaining hereupon bewitched by the illusion of life. Now was only missing from him to discover the secret of the death without dying, because if he died in the attempt, he would never be able to communicate the wisdom to the white men. Thereby Navutan crucified himself in the tree of terror to defeat the death, hanging 9 nights from its trunk. Nevertheless, as time passed by, the death was getting closer, and Navutan did not achieve to comprehend its secret. Finally, once agonizing, the great white chief closed his unique eye that he maintained fixed in the illusion of the world, and looked to the depths of himself, in a desperate and last reaction to save the life that was turning off without remedy. And in the summit of himself, in the middle of the infinite blackness of the insinuated death, he saw emerging a resplendent figure, a being that was pure gracefulness, was Freya, the joy of the spirit. His divine wife of the origin came to his rescue. When Navutan opens his eyes again, Freya gets out from it, and internates in the world of the great deceit. She goes in search for the secret of the death to save her agonizing husband. However, she didn't achieve it, and times end relentlessly. Finally, without despair, Freya goes to the Hyperborea to ask the liberator gods. They advise her to seek for a giant, Bicephalus, who lives in a world situated under the roots of the Tree of Terror, and who performs the office of sentinel. To that giant she must steal the Kalachakra key, because on it the traitor gods have engraved the secret of the death. The myth of the White Atlanteans is here very complex, and it is only convenient to mention that Freya, transformed in a raven, descends to the world of the giant Bicephalus and steals him the Kalachakra key. But to get it, she had to become assassin and whore. Freya, in fact, breaks with the strike of her axe the Kalachakra key. But the pin, when it fell, was transformed in 7 giants, with 7 heads each one, who sleep to let the root races live for them. Thereupon, and without alternatives because she is urged by time, Freya dresses with the veil of the death that such giants maintain attached with a lasso in each neck. Then she awakes them successfully and becomes their lovers. But unrelentingly, she goes beheading them in the culmination of the orgasm, and the head of the giants, skewered in a rope or a sutratma, forms the necklace of Freya Caliber, in which every skull represents a sign of the sacred alphabet of the white race. Finally, the veil of the death remains loose, and Freya, transformed in raven again, returns swiftly to Navutan. But it is too late. In the same moment when she arrived, Navutan exhales his last sigh, and his eye is being closed forever. Freya understands that it will be impossible to reveal Navutan the secret of the death because he has just died, and he won't be able to read the Kalachakra key. And that's how, without losing an instant, Freya takes the decision that she will save Navutan and the white race. She became a patronage and enters again in Navutan. The Kalachakra key must remain outside because only she can exist in the depths of himself. Freya must reveal to Navutan the secret of the death, not only to achieve his resurrection, but also to make her husband communicate it to men. In other way, his immolation would be in vain. But how expose to Navutan the secret of the death without the Kalachakra key? without showing him that instrument of the spiritual incarceration for his comprehension. And Freya decides, in that moment, as a partridge, she will dance the secret of life and death. She will express with the dance the highest wisdom that would be possible to comprehend by the mortal men from outside of themselves. And Freya, dancing in the depths of himself, reveals to Nabutan the secret coming from outside himself. And Nabutan understands it, and the spell caused by the fruit of the tree of life and death was cut, and he resuscitates again as an immortal. And when he descends from his crucifixion tree, he realizes that his body is transmuted and is of now pure stone, and that he can comprehend and express the language of the birds. So Nabutan teaches the White Atlanteans the 13+3 runes through the language of the birds, and guides them to understand the sign of the origin. With it they will obtain the highest wisdom, they will be immortal while the spirit remains chained to the animal man, and they will conquer eternity when they win the battle against the potencies of matter and be free again in the origin. I've synthesized hitherto, Dr. Siegnagel, the history of Nabutan. According to the mythical narration of the White Atlanteans, it is easy to advert that it had many common points with the Gospel's history of Jesus Christ. Both histories treats about a God-made man. Both gods born from a virgin. Both died by voluntary crucifixion. Both resuscitate. Both leave the testament of their wisdom. Both form disciples to whom they reveal the good new, that they shall communicate to their similars. Both affirm that the kingdom is not from this world, etc. But it is evident that exists also fundamental differences between both doctrines. Perhaps the most noticeable are the following. Nabutan comes to liberate the spirit of man, of his prison in the world of the Creator God. The spirit is uncreated, that's to say, not created by the Creator God, and hence, nothing that happens here can essentially smirch it, and much less affect it ethically. The spirit is innocent and pure of the eternity of the origin. For this reason, Nabutan affirms that the Hyperborean spirit belongs to a warrior race, and can manifest an essential hostility to the world of the Creator God, only can rebel itself from the material order, can only doubt about the reality of the world that constitutes the great deceit, can only refuse as false or enemy to all who is not product of himself, that is, the spirit, and can only encourage just one purpose with wisdom, to abandon the world of the Creator God, where is enslaved, and return to the world of the unknowable, where will be God again. Adversely, Jesus Christ comes to save the soul of men from the sin, from the disobedience to the law of the Creator God. The soul is created by the Creator God and has to obey blindly the law of the Father. All what happens here affect ethically to the soul and can increase its sin quota. The soul is not innocent, neither pure, because men are here in this world as a punishment of the original sin committed by the fathers of the mankind and inherited, thence, the original sin. For this reason, Jesus Christ affirms that soul of man, the most perfect creature of the Creator God, must only manifest an essential love attitude to the world of the Creator God, must only accept with resignation his place in the material order, must only believe in the reality of the world, must only accept as real and friendly what proves to come in the name of the Creator God, and must only encourage a unique objective with wisdom. To stay in the world of the Creator God as a lamb and be shepherded by Jesus Christ or the priests who represent him. To be a god or a lamb, in that consists, Dr. Siegnagel. As I anticipated with the imperial law of the year 392 threatened to consider crime of injured majesty, the practice of the pagan cults. Although the House of Tartessos had accepted Christianity long time ago as their familiar religion, logically, the lords of Tartessos saw clearly the march of such time, and their unique priority, since the destruction of Tartessos, was to give accomplishment to the familiar mission and preserve the wise sword. This familiar priority determined a strategy for the survival of the lineage, survival that could be strongly threatened by new persecution. The decadence of Rome that Polybius foresaw in the 2nd century BC had become real. The empire, stalked in all its frontiers by the invader populations, had incorporated entire regiments of mercenaries and has given the command to the barbarian armies. The agriculture of the small agriculturalists was ruined centuries ago and disappeared in Italy, absorbed by great landowners. Only survived in those days the colonial estates amongst them, the one that the Lord of Tartessos had in Spain, contributing with their low prices to destabilize the economy of the metropolis. In front of this panorama of general insecurity, the lords of Tartessos, who were not kings, but a family of landowners and Hispanic Roman functionaries, they must act with extreme caution, Christianity has been imposed in the summit of the imperial power, now is supported by spears and the legionaries' swords. But this Christianity evidently has not doctrinaire principles to result absolutely unacceptable for the lords of Tarsus. As they learned harshly in their war against the golems, the myths, the legendary histories, the arguments that are written in heaven can be repeated again in the earth. And they are disposed to accept the history of Jesus and even the message, the good news, as some kind of actualization of the myth of Nabutan. The lords of Tarsus will become Christians because they will see the history of Jesus with the optic of the ancient wisdom, and they will not discuss the differences, although they will have them present and they will never forget them. They will embrace the cross and will celebrate the sacraments of the Roman Church. For all the effects, they will be consecrated Christians. Even they will give from their children to the Church. But amongst them, in the middle of the house of Tarsus, they will only recognize as truth what is coincident with the history of Nabutan, or with other fragments of the Hyperborean wisdom that the family still retains. As in their moment, the Gnostics and Manichaean, and later make the Cathars and Albigenses, they will accept only a part of the Gospels, especially the Gospel of John, and will absolutely deny the Old Testament. This is what they alleged, that the God of the Jews was Jehovah Satan, an aspect or countenance of the God One, the creator of the material universe. In the Genesis is narrated the history of the creation of the material universe, where it would be enslaved to the eternal and uncreated spirit. The spirit only concedes value to the real world whence it comes, and from where also came the creator God, due to the material universe, has been evidently created as imitation of the real world. And in the Old Testament is narrated also the history of the chosen people by Jehovah Satan, the reign over all the countries of the earth. It was not clear then, the promise that the Creator had made unto Abraham, "Lookest around whence you are, to the north and south, to the east and west. All the land that thou seest I will give to thee and thine offspring forever. I will make thine offspring like the dust of the earth, so that if anyone could reckon the dust, then thine offspring would be counted. Goest, walkest upon the length and breadth of the land, for I am giving it to thee." Genesis 13:14. Promise which is reaffirmed later, in taking him out, Jehovah said unto him, "Lookest out to the sky and countest, if thou can, the stars." And he added, "Thine offspring wilt be as the stars thou seest in the sky." But the Creator was clearer with Moses when he revealed the mission of the chosen people. "Therefore, if ye will hear my voice indeed, and keep my covenant, then ye shall be my chief treasure above all people. Though all the earth be mine, ye shall be unto me also a kingdom of priests, and a holy nation. These are the words which thou shalt speak unto the children of Israel." And he answered, "Behold, I will make a covenant before all thy people, and will do marvels, such as have not been done in all the world, neither in all nations, and all the people among whom you are shall seek the work of the Lord, for it is a terrible thing that I will do with thee. Keep diligently that which I command thee this day. Take heed to thyself, that thou make no compact with the inhabitants of the land whither thou goest, lest they be the cause of ruin among you. But ye shall overthrow their altars, and break their images in pieces, and cut down their groves, Asherah poles." When complying with the covenant, the chosen people will be blessed by the Creator according to what he communicates to Moses. "Ye shall make you no idols nor graven image, neither rear you up any pillar, neither shall ye set any image of stone in your land to bow down to it. I am the Lord your God. Ye shall keep my Sabbaths and reverence my sanctuary. I am the Lord. If ye walk in my ordinances and keep my commandments and do them, I will then send you rain in due season, and the land shall yield her increases, and the trees of the field shall give their fruit, and your threshing shall reach unto the vintage, and the vintage shall reach unto sowing time, and you shall eat your bread in plenteousness, and dwell in your land safely, and I will send peace in the land, and ye shall sleep, and no one shall make you afraid. Also I will rid evil beasts out of the land, and the sword shall not go through your land. Also ye shall chase your enemies, and they shall fall before you upon the sword. And 5 of you shall chase 100, and 100 of you shall put 10,000 to flight, and your enemies shall fall before you upon the sword. For I will have respect unto you, and make you increase and multiply you, and establish my covenant with you. Ye shall eat also old store, and carry out old because of the new. And I will set my tabernacle amongst you, and my soul shall not loathe you. And I will walk amongst you, and I will be your God, and ye shall be my people. I am the Lord your God, which have brought you out of the land of Egypt. The chosen people, hence, would be the one that the swarthy Atlanteans announced thousands of years ago. The enemies of the pact of blood. Was at least ironic that now was pretended to derive from such damn people an emulous of Nabutan, the founder of the pact of blood. But Jesus was not coming to save the pact of blood, but precisely to destroy it forever. What demonstrated that the consequence of his provenance from the chosen people, by Jesus Christ, the pure blood, would be degraded as never before. The entire mankind would become bastard, the courage would gel in the veins, and would be replaced by the fear of the God One. And when men be materialized, and would not answer to the fear of the God One any more, courage would not emerge anyway, because men would be immersed in the moral degradation of the cultural decadence. They would become effeminate and softened. They would be confused in a universal scoundrel of the spirit. But this vile scoundrel, naturally, even the church as the other founded sects by the chosen people in the white fraternity, would extract the best of the earth, that's to say, to those who would support and aid them with favor. The priests and the faithfuls, the members of the secret societies that would reign the world, and the scoundrel of the spirit that would approve their government, worms and serpents, lamb and sheep, peace pigeons, no eagle, no condor, Dr. Siegnagel. Of course, that the expectation to this rule remains save to the ones of the pure blood. To all those that into it, with the crucifixion, the eternal spirit must be liberated, that it never sinned and not saved the sinner's soul. To those who want a warrior Christos and not a shepherd Christ. To those who feel a Christos of uncreated light and not to those who perceive a material Christ. The Christos that the Lord of Tarsus conceived, for example, was a spiritual, pure God of uncreated light, who, if would be manifested in the earth, would make it wearing a king's crown and wielding the sword. And in this parousia, the mere presence of Christos would be enough to produce a spiritual aristocracy amongst men that would put end to the confusion of the spiritual scoundrel. Christos would communicate charismatically to men. He would talk to them directly to their pure blood, and he would be able to listen it better, would be really the most virtuous, the most spiritual, the real Christians.